Very good afternoon, dear authors and invited guests. Welcome to the technical session 6B. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the 5th International Conference on Information and Communication Technology for Intelligent Systems through Zoom on behalf of ICTIS 2021 and Global Knowledge Research Foundation. We are thankful to everyone present on this platform to go along with us digitally for the conference in this unpredictable circumstances of COVID-19 and making this conference work more productive. Also, we wish everyone and their families a very protected time, and we all will together pass this soon. We hope you will enjoy the last day of the knowledgeful and interactive sessions. So just before we get started, I would like to introduce you all to the chair of this session, Dr. Vinod Tumar. He is an assistant professor at Vishwakarma Government Engineering College, Ahmedabad, and he has more than 14 years of experience in industry as well as academics. His research areas are data security, blockchain, and AI. Thank you so much, sir, for chairing the session.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I would like to start with papers. Also, there is a special note for the presenters. You will be given 8 minutes for your presentation, and on 7 minutes, we will raise a gentle reminder. Also, I would like to request other participants while the presentation is going on, kindly be muted. So, our first presentation is from Mrs. Sonal Shekhawat, and her presentation is about automation of MC-DC coverage test case suite, deploying the optimal strategic choice for tool development. Hello, Ms. Sonal.
Hello, good
Yes.
afternoon.
Good afternoon. You can go ahead. Ma'am, your internet connection. Ma'am, I guess you have a problem with your internet connection. Please check with that.
Yeah. Better now is my screen.
Yes, it is visible.
Okay. Can I start? Can I start? Hello.
There is a problem with your audio. Can you fix it?
Ma'am, you facing any issues?
Hello. Am I audible?
You are audible, but there is a error and disturbance in your audio.
Is the screen visible now?
No, now audio is clear and screen is not visible.
Okay. Can I just try disconnecting?
Okay, no worries.
Connecting it?
You can rejoin the meeting, and till then we are moving with our next presenter. You can rejoin the meeting.
Sure. Okay.
So we are moving ahead with our. Okay, so we are moving ahead with our next presenter. Our next presentation is from Ms. Manisha A. Nirgude, and her presentation is about the iris recognition system based on convolutional neural network.
Yes.
So is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, one and all. Myself, Manisha Nirgude. I'm presenting my work on iris recognition system based on convolutional neural network, and my co-author is Dr. Sachin Gengji. So as we know, the current authentication methods are use of password, pins, patterns. Also, we are using ATM cards and smart cards, but there are a lot many problems with the existing systems. And then the next solution comes towards the biometric authentication. So this is based on the unique attributes of human body. And this is again the stable research against the biometric authentication. So in biometric authentication, it is used face, then iris, then retina, and then fingerprints, and so on. Out of this, it is believed that iris is the unique and stable for every person. Even the left and right eye of the person is having different iris, so that can be used as an identity of a person. These are stable and remains unchanged over a period of time unless it is damaged. And it is a multi-layer texture of the combination of the color. So as we know, the color of eye which we are having, so brown, green, blue, and all, this is due to the iris or the combination of the layers of iris. Now, many researchers has already studied this iris recognition system, which generally consists or the which is after capturing the eye image, it is the first task that we should segregate or we should segment the iris from the eye image, and then we should work further for feature extraction and classification or matching purpose. But the problem with this system, with this particular phase is that in real-time scenario, there are many problems with the eye images, like occlusion in eye images. There are images can be the blur, there can be poor illumination, the distance, type of camera, the distance between camera and eye. These are the issues which makes this iris segmentation as a challenging task. Second scenario is that all the algorithms what we have that has been proposed are proposed on the standard data sets. Okay, so this is the issues like guaranteed high recognition accuracy and scalability for different databases, since it has been tested against the standard databases. And that's why we have come up with the next solution which we propose, that is iris recognition system based on convolutional neural network, which will be scale and rotation invariant and scalable with high recognition accuracy, where we are skipping the what you can say, where we are skipping the task of segmentation of iris, and the complete eye image will be given as an input to this iris. So what is CNN or the convolutional neural network? It's again a deep forward neural network with images as an input. So we are having the set of layers like as we can see here, convolutional ReLU, then pooling, and so on. And then at the end, we are having the softmax layer, which gives us the classification or the label of the image. So designing a new CNN architecture for image classification requires two things, that we need to define the number of layers, weights, filters, and so on. And then we require the large volume of data for accurate training of the model, which will take the large time. So other option is that we can use the pre-trained CNN models, that is the existing trained model for the other data set that we can apply, that trains the training of that particular model with the weights and the feature extraction methods to the other application, and which is called as a transfer learning. So transfer learning use this existing pre-trained model on a new data set, and where we have to replace the last layers of the classes and the problem size. Now, one more thing in the CNN is that we require a large database. Okay, so there is a task to build, there is a challenge to build a large database, and to reduce the problem of overfitting, we should do this data augmentation. So using the data augmentation, we can create large data set from the existing one. So some of the techniques are vertical and horizontal flipping, then cropping, rotation, translation, and so on. So with these methods, we have created 3 more data sets from the existing data set. So here we have used 2 data sets. One is the cashier data sets and the other one is IIT database. So these are the some samples which we have rotated 1 degree each. So up to 5 degree clockwise and 5 degree anti-clockwise. That's how we have converted this original image into 10 new more images. And thus we are having 102 classes, and each image is having 7 images. That's how we have converted the large database of 7,000 images. So here rotation was little bit. In the second data set, we have rotated more. So 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25 degree clockwise and anti-clockwise. So this is the other data set that we have created. And the third data set here, combination of the images that we have created so that we could take this, we could simulate the scenario of real time, that we are having some images with increased contrast, then histogram equalization, then we have added some noise over there, we have dilated the images, we have rotated the images, and thus we have created these 3 more data sets. So these are the 5 data sets on which we have worked. So one is, this is the complete eye images with only 714 images, and this is the IIT database, which is with 2000 images, and these 3 are the augmented data sets. So we have used here hardware with desktop Core i5 with graphics card, of course, for parallel processing and the faster results, and software used is MATLAB 17 with GPU. So pre-trained model used is here AlexNet. So first step is that we have to resize all the images to make equal size, then store all the images in that object. Then we have to split it into the training and testing data set, load the existing model, and then change the layers in that particular model. So this is the 5-layer convolutional neural network. There are the 5 layers. So every layer consists of convolutional, this ReLU, then normalization and pooling. That's how we are getting these layers. And at the end, we are having here classification output layer. So here the parameters that we have used after the study, empirical study over there, that we have used here, stochastic gradient descent with momentum solver name and the cross entropy function for calculating this loss to adjust the weights and to minimize this loss. Then initial learning rate that we have kept is 0.001. Maximum number of epochs that we have used is 5 to 50. Batch size is from 10 to 15. And then we have used here GPU. With these parameters, we have trained the network. So in the first, we are obtained here low level features. Then in the second, we have gone for the higher level features. In the third level, more higher level. That's how we have got these features after 5-layer convolution, which is the input to the next layers. And after loading this particular CNN model, we are going to test the model. So how to test it? Load the trained model, pass the testing images, get the predicted class, and try to match that class with the ground truth.
Sorry to interrupt you, ma'am, but 1 last minute left for your presentation.
So this is how we are testing the data sets. And this is the accuracy that we have obtained for various data sets. That is the recognition accuracy and how many images have been correctly found positive against the total number of images, and equal error rate, which is against the FAR and FRR. So if you look at this, for all the databases, we have achieved the accuracy of around 100%. With only the images, we are having 715 images, we have got the accuracy of 96.77. These are the graphs of EER where we are getting this equal error rate. So as we can see, we have got less EER as compared to these 2 data sets. So if we'll compare this, then we have tried for variation of this training images and testing images also. And then we have found that, yes, we have, with only 30% of training images also, we have got 100% accuracy. This is for, again, data set number 7. So if we compare the performance of our system with the other researchers, we have almost got this 100% accuracy and with less error, where we have added some noise and all the real-time images, some EER was little bit increased. This is for cache database, whereas this is for IITD database. This is our result with with respect to other systems. So summarize, many researchers propose iris recognition system using CNN, but they have used a standard data set of 20,000 images, and then they have achieved 100% accuracy with less error, where we have proposed this model only for the data set containing 700 images, and we have still achieved this comparable results. Here we have skipped the task of reprocessing or the segmentation, which saves again the computation cost. And yes, successfully we can handle this blur images, noisy images, contrast images, and so on, which defines our robust iris recognition system. So I want to conclude that we have developed a robust and performance efficient iris recognition system, which can be used as one of the secure and reliable authentication mechanism system. So these are the future scopes. Of course, we have to work for the actual real-time images, color images, more number of scales, and EER should be 0% in future. So these are the references. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, I would like to ask one question that what is the maximum number of images it is through this tool?
I cannot hear you properly. Can you repeat Maximum number of images.
Yes. Maximum number of images you can test through this tool. What is the level of maximum number of images?
No, there is no limit, sir. So what I have done is that initially I have taken 60% images for training purpose and
Okay.
40% images I have used for testing purpose.
Okay.
And then I have varied it that training I have reduced from 60 to 50, 30, 20 and 10 and I have increased again the testing images.
Okay.
And
It
still
means that if I would like to test more than 10,000 images, then it is applicable for that task.
yeah, so it will be going, see, ultimately every image is going to be tested one by one. So of course, if you are increasing the time to if you are increasing the number of images, only the testing time will be increased. And at a time for a system, we can give any number of images, but in real time scenario, a particular person, only one input will be there. And then
Okay.
we want to recognize that person.
Okay. And one more thing, what is the type of image? We have different type of images are there. Okay. There are various formats are there. So all file formats are applicable with this tool, or you have tested only specific file format?
Yeah, I have checked with only JPEG files.
Okay, okay.
But
Remaining
I
file
don't think
formats.
so. See, in CNN, input is an image. So type
Okay.
of image will not matter in this particular algorithm. I can pass any type of any image to this particular system.
Okay, it means that only in any text file or PDF is not applicable for this tool, right?
No, because it is the iris that we are inputting. So eye image which we are capturing, that we are giving as an input. So it will be
Okay.
the image of eye only, which is standard. Otherwise for CNN, we can pass any input image as an image.
Okay, madam. Thank you. Wish you all the best for the same. Please, next.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Ms. Manisha. And our first presenter is back. So, Ms. Sonal, you can start now. I hope you're good with your internet connection now.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
And
it's
is my
perfectly
screen
fine.
visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so can I start now?
Yes, yes. Please go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sonal Shekhawat from GTRE DRDO, and my topic of presentation for today is automation of MCDC coverage test case suite, deploying the optimal strategic choice for tool development. So before starting, let's get just familiar with what a coverage means. So when it comes to the source code, when we write the software, so it's the metric to measure the extent to which one activity has achieved its objective. So there are different types of coverages. So when it comes to source code, there are different types of coverages. First is the statement coverage, which analyzes each statement for the coverage. And then the next coverage is the decision coverage. It basically focuses on the decision of the statement. Next is the condition coverage. So instead of focusing, we can have different conditions in a decision statement. So the point of condition coverage is to test each condition rather just focusing on decision coverage. Next is the condition/decision coverage, which is also known as C/D coverage. So it is a combination of both decision and condition coverage, which covers both decision and condition coverage. Next is the multiple condition coverage. It requires all possible input combination. All the input combinations needs to be executed at least once in order to achieve multiple condition coverage. And the next condition coverage is the modified condition/decision coverage, which is our point of discussion today, which requires each conditions to be analyzed by varying that condition exclusively while keeping other conditions constant. So the point of the question is, why do we even consider yes, so why do we need to check this MCDC? So as per DO 178B, which is a guidelines for the software production in airborne industry, it says that if based on the criticality level of each software, there are design assurance levels have been designated, and as per those design levels, different coverages has to be achieved in order to get them certified. So for level A softwares, we need to ensure 100% MCDC coverage in addition to decision and statement coverage. But with this, with modified condition/decision coverage, it subsumes decision and statement coverage. Once it is achieved, decision and statement coverage will automatically be achieved. So next, we'll be seeing what are the algorithms what I have used for MCDC automation. So before that, I would like to say this: what is the objective? What do we exactly mean by MCDC? How does it achieved? How is it achieved? So the main point of concern of a MCDC is to test the independent effect of each condition. We have to vary each condition while keeping the other condition constant and see the effect on the decision. If the decision is toggling, it means that pair fulfills the condition to be qualified for MCDC. So there are two approaches which I have identified. So first approach is the minimal case analysis approach. In this approach, we will be focusing on the basic decision statements, and then we will get the result, and we'll use those results further to achieve MCDC for the derived condition. And the second condition is the duo case analysis approach, which directly focuses on the definition of the MCDC, which clearly says that you have to take a pair and just keep all the conditions constant while vary only one, and then see the difference on the result. So we'll start one by one. So first is the MCAA. As I mentioned, we will discuss the base case scenarios. So here we have two operators, AND operator and OR operator. So as per the definition, the first three test cases for AND operator are required for 100% MCDC, and for OR operator, the last three cases. So if I go for a complex statement, for example, I have taken P and Q or S, which is a derived statement and not just a basic statement containing only one operator. So what is the point here? We will be starting with the basic condition, which is P and Q here. If I see, there are three test cases required as per the basic thing. So if I go condition by condition, if true is there, test cases 7 and 8 can be used to achieve this. For true false, 5 and 6 can be used. For false true, 3 and 4 can be used. Similarly, when the result of this is obtained, which is C here, and this or S will give you this result. So for this condition, C or S, hello?
Yes, you can continue.
Okay, thank you. Actually, it got disconnected. I saw some other screen.
No, someone has started sharing the screen. So I request all of you, please don't share the screen until your turn comes.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yes.
So as I was saying, so condition with OR S. So next we'll be seeing the result of this AND condition or with the other condition. So I'll be using the other conditions. So for example, for C or S, I'll be using false, for which 1, 3, and 5 test cases are qualified. Then for true and false, the other test cases, which is 7, and then false or true, then which is 2, 4, 6. So out of these test cases, I have to identify the test cases in such a way that minimal number of test cases are required in order to achieve 100% MCDC. So for I have to use this table to get the number of test cases. So the final test cases which I achieve here is the 3, 6, 7. If I see every condition is being satisfied by some or the other test case. So here, this is the minimal case analysis approach where I am getting 100% MCDC.
Hello, ma'am, sorry to interrupt you, but Mr. Mohammed Hassan, please go, your session is 6A. I've sent you the link, so you can please join your session 6A.
Okay.
Please, please go in. Yeah, please be continued.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
So the next approach I was talking about is the duo case analysis approach. Here, that approach is different. Here we will consider the derived condition as usual, and we'll list down all the possible combinations of the conditions. Here we will go directly about the definition of MCDC. So for example, if I talk about P condition. So if I talk about P condition, if I talk about P condition, I can see that there are different test cases paired. For example, 5 and 13, you see 6 and 14, and 7 and 15. So if I see 5 and 13, only P condition is varying, which is true and false. Rest all the conditions are same, which is true, false, false. And the decision outcome is varying. In case of 5, it is false, and in case of 13, it is true. So this pair qualifies to be a pair required for MCDC for particular condition P. So I have all the cases. So for P, I have listed down all the test cases pair. For example, 513 will be used, 614 will be used, or 715. Any of the pairs can be used in the final test case suit. For Q, I have listed this 9, 13, 10, 14, 11, 15. Similarly for R and S, for all these conditions, these are used. So what I'll be doing, I'll be using the table, I'll be creating a correlation matrix where the weightage of each test case is given. So I will start with the test case which is having the maximum number of weightage. So if I see any of the test cases, every test case is at most contributing to 2 conditions. So I can start with any of the test cases which is contributing to 2 conditions. So I have started with 6 test cases. So it is for condition P, if I see it, 6 and 14 will be contributing for the P condition. And the second, similarly, I have already included 14 for P condition. So I don't need to include any other 2 cases. Since 14 is already included, I can include the other pair of 14, which is 10 for condition Q. Similarly, I can include 12 for condition 3, which is for condition R. And then I can include 11 because the 12 has already been included and 11 is the pair of 12, and hence we can achieve MCDC for S also. So in this case, I can achieve MCDC for P, Q, R, and S. So the final result will be having the 5 test cases where effect of each condition is explicitly visible. So these are the 2 approaches I came up with. So then my question was to which approach to select in order to design the tool in order to implement it as a part of the code. So since we have seen first approach, MCCA, it is a constructive approach which has the focus on the base case scenarios, and at the end of the execution we get the number of test cases which is fulfilling 100% MCDC coverage. And similarly DCAA. So, and when I see in the number of test cases, both MCAA and DCAA are providing a linear rate of growth. So it hardly varies by a test case 1 or 2, but it provides 100% MCDC coverage. So what should be the point of consideration in order to select which one I have to select in order to implement it as a part of the tool? So in case of DCCA, as I have already mentioned, the independent effect of each condition as per the definition is clearly evident. So on the basis of that, I have chosen the DCAA algorithm over MCAA in order to execute further in Python and automate the process. So next this is the final tool design. I have applied the algorithm in Python and designed this tool where you simply have to enter the expression, which is the first line, and the result will be displayed as it is, which is with the truth table, all the test case pairs, and what can be the solution for this. And the final solution, you don't need to manually design the test cases. You can simply feed all the given test cases and get the 100% MCDC coverage. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay. I would like to one question that you have used 2 approach, MCAA and DCAA. Okay.
Yes, sir.
You told that you have adopted DCAA because it's independent effect. Can you elaborate the difference between DCAA and MCAA, because why you have selected DCAA?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, so this is MCAA. If you see the result, we have 2 conditions here. We have 3 conditions, P, Q, and S. But when it comes to show the independent effect, you cannot really see when you are varying, for example, or varying only P condition and rest everything is same.
Okay.
Yeah, but when it comes to DCAA, this is the result, sir. So for example, I consider 6, as I've mentioned in the table above, 6 and 14 are eligible for, are clearly for if you see 6 and 14. So in 6, P is false, and in 14, P is true.
P is true.
So it is varying, but Q, R, and S in 6 and 14, these are same.
Both are similar.
But the final result, yes, but the final result is varying. In 6, it is false, and in 14, it is true. So that's how I am.
So we can obtain on the basis of P, right?
Yes. So here I can see that 6 and 14 clearly showing the independent effect of P as per the definition of MCDC.
Okay, it means that there is a less number of comparison in this category.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Okay, wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sonal. And now our next presentation is from Mr. Paurav Goel, and his presentation is about enhancing the date rate by the management of bandwidth and power using interference temperature constraint in cognitive radio networks. Hello, Mr. Paurav. Hello, Mr. Paurav.
Hello,
Yes,
am I audible?
yes.
I'm not able to share the screen.
You can. You are free to share your screen.
Okay. Yes. A very good afternoon to all of you. My name is Paurav Goel and I'm here to present my paper enhancing the data rate by the management of bandwidth and power using interference temperature constraint in cognitive radio networks. Firstly is the abstract. As we know, nowadays the network is very much overcrowded and cognitive radio helps us in solving the problem of this overcrowdedness by utilizing the unutilized part of the spectrum. And also we know that interference plays a negative role in the success of cognitive radio network. So we have taken interference temperature as a constraint to solve the problem. The proposed approach implements a feedback system in cognitive radio network using interference temperature and achievable capacity as a constraint using back propagation neural network. Our goal is to maximize the data rate at a particular time and at a designated channel, and so that channel utilization is maximized. Here the contents, introduction, literature survey, problem formulation, objective, methodology, results, and references. First, I would like to give you the introduction of cognitive radio. As we know, the available electromagnetic spectrum is a limited natural resource and getting crowded day by day due to increase in wireless devices and applications. It is also found that allocated spectrum is not fully utilized because of the static allocation of the spectrum by FCC. So this issue of spectrum underutilization in wireless communication can be solved by dynamic allocation of electromagnetic spectrum using cognitive radio, because cognitive radio enables unlicensed users to use the licensed spectrum in a proficient manner through dynamic spectrum access. Now, cognitive radio was devised by Joseph Mottola III in 1998. It was designed in order to provide highly reliable communication for all users of the network for efficient utilization of the radio spectrum. Relatively low utilization of licensed spectrum, which is due to ineffective fixed frequency regulations, that is been given below. Now, the observation has forced to search a method where secondary users are allowed to utilize the unused primary bands, commonly referred as white spaces and vacant spaces, as shown in the figure. When the licensed users are not using the licensed spectrum, that gives the opportunity to the secondary users or cognitive users to use those gaps, which are also called as vacant spaces or white spaces. Now, what are the characteristics of cognitive radio? Cognitive process starts with sensing of RF environment and culminates with actions. There are basically what cognitive radio do. Cognitive radio will analyze the your radio scene, and it will estimate the channel and make prediction, and then it will adapt to the environment and change its transmit power, the frequency, and change its the parameters of the transmitter so that the final results can be achieved. So this is all about I have talked. First is first it will check the sense the network, sense the radio scene, then it will adapt, and then it will reconfigure. So this is the basically block diagram, the radio frequency in order to provide these capabilities, CR requires a novel radio frequency transceiver architecture. The main components of CR transceiver are the radio front end and the basement processing unit, and that were originally proposed by the software defined radio. As I already talked, the interference temperature is our main topic. Interference temperature is used as an appropriate scale to calculate and cope interference. It is a measure of power and bandwidth occupied by the interference. It amounts to be the sum of the RF power produced by unwanted transmitters and noise sources that are existent in a receiver system. Interference temperature is measured in Kelvin and can be calculated as division of the input power at the 89 watts and the related RF bandwidth measured in hertz multiplied by a term known as Boltzmann constant K. And the formula is given below. So these are basically the advantages. The main advantage is that it uses the unutilized spectrum. Applications in literature survey, we have gone through number of papers through which we have find our problem. So I will discuss the problem formulation. The FCC, Federal Communication reports that 90% of the licensed spectrum bands remain idle at a given time and location. So to solve this problem, cognitive radio users or secondary users use two spectrum access schemes. One is called as the spectrum underlay, another is called as the spectrum overlay. Spectrum overlay improves the spectrum utilization by granting secondary users to the authority to sense and explore the unused spectrum offered by PUs. In this scenario, SUs can use the unused channel of PUs and transmit with full power on these channels. It means secondary user will use the licensed spectrum only when the primary user is absent. But in spectrum underlay, the SUs and PUs, means secondary user and the licensed user, also called as primary user, can use the network, share the network in such a way that secondary user does not cause interference to the primary user. Now in the spectrum underlay, SU needs to, because when both PU and SU will communicate at same time, then SU needs to restrict their transmit power so that it may not cause severe interference to the primary user. But if the transmission power of the SU is kept so low that it may cause outage at the secondary user link, means that the secondary signal to noise ratio at the receiver may not achieve the value required for proper communication. So the power control problem is the major concern in spectrum underlay CRNs. So our research aims to both mitigate the interference from SU to PUs that guarantee the quality of service of primary communication, and to maximize the utility of each individual SU among all the competitive SUs in CRN, hence the capacity of the system, that is maximum achievable capacity. That is maximum capacity at the secondary user link can be achieved. Now objective is to sense the spectrum when primary user are active. So the first objective is to the spectrum sensing, and the second is the proposing a feedback approach using back propagation neural network, where secondary users sense the unused spectrum and give feedback. Here the secondary user will sense the unused spectrum using spectrum sensing and will give the feedback to the secondary transmitter about the signal to noise ratio at that channel.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Paurav, but one last minute left for your presentation.
Okay, ma'am, I will come to the system model. We have used one primary user set and one secondary user set. So one primary user transmitter, one primary user receiver, one secondary user transmitter, one secondary user receiver. These are the basic formulas we will use to achieve the capacity data rate, and to calculate the interference temperature. The third formula is being used. The proposed feedback model is the SU receiver units, SUR1, will determine the availability of the spectrum of PU as already discussed, and it will give the feedback about the data rate requirement, about the allowable interference limits, and the other signal to noise ratio also. And according to this, the transmitter will change its parameters of transmitter power and that bandwidth. And the objective is to minimize the difference between the achievable capacity and obtained data rate, and the allowable interference temperature limit, and the achievable interference temperature limit should be the minimum, the difference. So we have used the backward propagation model, where the the output is compared with the target, and if there is if the difference is not less than 1, then the feedback the weights and the inputs are changed so that the difference becomes the minimum, and when the difference becomes minimum, our process stops. So here we have taken one primary user. So this is the energy spectrum sensing that will sense the primary user, and the interference temperature of the primary user is 223 dB Kelvin, and we have taken the allowable interference temperature limit to be 465 dB Kelvin. So there is a difference of 242 dB Kelvin in IT, and the achievable capacity is 87 Mbps, but the primary user is sending at 33 Mbps. So firstly, we will use the underlay approach. The both primary user and secondary user are transmitting at the same time. So we can see when both are transmitting, the interference temperature is 440 dB Kelvin, but the limit is 465. So it is okay, both can communicate at same time. But when primary user gets absent, the secondary user gets the opportunity to increase its bandwidth and power. So first of all, bandwidth adaptation will take place, and according to the learning rate, the bandwidth of the secondary user will increase till it matches the bandwidth of the primary user, as shown in these figures. Now, in these results, we see that the data rate achieved is 71 Mbps, and there is still the IT difference is still of 175 Kelvin. So to further increase the data rate, now we will start increasing the power of the secondary user. So here we can see that we have started increasing the power in the figures, and when the interference temperature limit difference becomes minimum, so the power stops increasing, as shown in the last figure. So we can see we have in 6th row the interference difference is 0.5 and difference in achievable capacity is 0.65. So we have achieved the maximum data rate. So this is the result of the data rate after bandwidth adaptation, and further the data rate has improved after power reconfiguration. So at last, we can say that our system has achieved higher data rate as compared to the data rate of the system without feedback. We have a better channel utilization from 43% to 95% as compared to the existing systems without feedback. So using cognitive radio and by incremental change in power, data rate and power, we have increased the maximum channel utilization and have also reduced the problem of outage at the secondary user link. Thank you. Hello.
Yes, I would like to ask you one question, that is there any effect of noise or any kind of disturbance will affect your results? Have you tested it?
Sir, I have tested. That is why I have taken interference temperature as the metric. Now, when we take interference temperature, it will take into account all the noises in that channel and all other transmitter adjacent channel interference, co-channel interference, and all the noises in that channel. Interference temperature will take all these parameters into the
It means that after calculating and after considering all the noises, this is the final result, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's fine, good. Next.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, our next presentation is from Ms. Shweta Brahmbhatt. Her presentation is about algorithmic approach to select MOOC's platform and institutional perspective.
Very good afternoon to all of you. Ma'am, my screen is visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Good afternoon to one and all of you. And here my topic is algorithmic approach to select MOOCs platform. That is an institutional perspective. So in my presentation, my outlines are abstract introduction, and then I will go for the objectives, and then identification of MOOCs parameters, and then algorithmic approach of MOOCs platform, that is on perspective of the institution. And lastly, I will conclude with my research. So we all know the virtual learning is a buzzword now in the COVID situation, and it is a learning that gives without four walls. So virtual learning played a vital role in the education system. So after e-learning, there is very demanding word, that is a MOOCs. That is a massive open online courses. So now onwards, all the people are towards the MOOCs platforms. So it is become one of the most effective academic warriors. So MOOCs has a concept of triple A, that is you can study from anywhere, and anytime you can study on the platform with the help of the internet. As per the survey, internet users in India are growing at the rate of 14%, and it is a high time for the institutions to provide an alternate for additional environment of learning, that is e-learning. So here I explored the global MOOCs provider like edX, Coursera, Udacity, and Course Builder. And after exploring this all the platforms, I have drawn out some parameters with respect to the institutions. So identified indicators of MOOCs platform through which any institute can take the decision to implement the e-learning environment in their campus. For this purpose, a tree ID3 algorithm used for the same, which helped to take the decision on MOOCs platform. The proposed algorithm took account of every questions relating to each institute-centric indicators and provided a final assessment as per the institute preference. So four important institutional-centric core indicator or parameters, which are courses, learner-centric platform, multimedia enrichment, into content and administrative indicator that also includes certificate and financial. Now, there are four aims and objectives of my presentation. First is identification of MOOCs parameter in institutional context. Second is feature of the platform based on its indicator. Third is requirement based traversing of parametric tree. And fourth is identification of best suitable MOOCs platform as per the preference of the institute. Now, I have drawn out some MOOCs parameter that they are effective to the institute. First is course type, means whether courses are paid or free. We have a SWAYAM in India, in that courses are free, but edX, Udacity, Coursera, in that some courses are paid. Second is mental support medium. Some platforms have a mentor facility, some have doesn't. Then social network connection through integrated social networking app, people can share their ideas and share their courses to the society. Fourth is assessment tools. Same as we give assessment in class, here assessment tools are integrated into the MOOCs platform. Then discussion groups, peer connect functionality is also availability. Means discussion forums are available to discuss within the scholar students. Then multilingual support for course and website. It is very important because MOOCs are a global platform, and every language person is came on this platform, so it provides the multilingual facility. Then responsive website with mobile app. That is also necessary for mobile app. Website should be responsive and it has a bootstrap CSS. Then openness of technology, financial section verified assessment. Openness of technology in the sense anyone can install it, configure it, and use it for their institute to give the education to the children. Now, to execute my MOOCs parameter through the ID3 algorithm, firstly, what I have done first step is classification of the collected data that is been carried out and trends the dataset of the MOOCs platform. And I have given the classification attribute like high, medium, and low. Step 2 is there are three types of attributes. There are nominal, ordinal, and binary. So in my parameters, these are the values. So for providing the estimated values depending on different parameters, we need to take account of every questions relating to each parameter and give a final estimate according to the user preference of the parameters. By having an attribute with the smallest information gain as the root node, and further algorithm continue to recurse on each subset, considering only attributes never selected before. Means each time unique attribute will be come in the traverse tree. ID3 makes sure that the entire decision tree is traversed and every parameter is taken into consideration. In step 3, I have counted the entropy of the whole data set, and that output attribute is a platform. So by using the indicators, institute will come to know which platform is as per their preference. Step 4 is for each attribute, our information gain has been calculated. And step 5 is the parameter which I have. I have applied the fuzzy mean like alpha equal to 0.5. Then for nominal attributes, weightage is 5 point, and for binary attributes, yes or no. So for yes is 5 point, and for no, it is 0. Then final formula for weighting the question is fx is equal to weight x into 100 upon total weight of questions. Their maximum weight factor wf is equal to 5. So it is this is my the tree of the traverse. So these are the nodes type of course. Free or paid means edX, Coursera, and Course Builder have a facility of free courses, and edX, Coursera, Course Builder, Udacity have a facility of free and paid courses. Then there are academic and professional learner. Then these are the pace of the methodology. Then live coaching is provided in which platform. Platform customization has been done in which platform. Then certificate is provided in which platform. Likewise, I have traversed whole the tree, and in the final thing, there is an attribute like low, medium, and high. For that, I have applied the fuzzy logic, and on basis of that, I have calculated the score. So in final, the preference which I have selected, so edX got 86 points. So XCDs and micro master, specialization, nano degree, and low learning pathway means these are the pathways provided by the different platforms. So what is the conclusion of my research? That it has been found that there are several indicators which influence the institutions to take the decision on selection of the MOOC platform for their institute. Second is, in other words, this parameter help institution to make their own decision on the basis of the requirement and feasibility. However, edX and Coursera appear in initial node of the tree, which reflect that these platforms are providing broader aspect of MOOCs feature. It gives result on the basis of institutional point of view and choice. If institute need more diversity in courses, then Coursera platform is good. Means Coursera provides the more domain of courses like in art and science and technology. They have more diversity in courses. Similarly, if institute has technical expertise and faculties, means if I take Nirma University, they have a technical experts, then they can build their in-house MOOCs and they can use course builders. So through this application or tool, they can identify that which platform is good for them or which platform as a good choice for them. This research is very useful for those institutes who are planning to implement the MOOCs platform for their institute. The limitation of the study is the fast growing cutting edge technology and development team of each platform. Means nowadays there are a development community for each of these platforms. So the technical features are more and more good by day. So the result of this study may be changed in the future if any upgradation happens in the platforms. That's all.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Will you please tell me what is information gain which you have indicated in the tree? It is a fractional value. So what do you mean by that value?
Yes, sir. Means the calculation of my information gain is the, just 1 minute, is the probability of that variable or that value in the whole data set. Like if I am calculated about for the target learner, then out of 16, 7 possibility are there for academic, then 9 possibility for professional courses. Like this, the main means that is calculated with the values.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Ms. Shweta. And our next presentation is from Ms. Sapna Jain, and her presentation is about review of forthcoming ICT-enabled applications promoting learning in higher education.
Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes.
Is my screen visible, ma'am?
No, not yet.
But I shared it. I clicked on the shared screen.
Just a minute. It's still not visible.
Okay. I think now it is visible.
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. Just you have to bear with my little bit throat because I I'm not well. Actually, I'm COVID positive, so I was not able to actually do it also properly, the presentation. But still, I am trying to present. So due to my
Okay, it's fine. You can complete your presentation within 4 to 5 minutes.
because actually I'm not I'm having what we call khasi ho rahi hai, sir.
Okay, just show me the slides of your
I have prepared it
presentation.
today only because I was not at home also. So I am
Okay.
just telling because this happened with me. Sir, my presentation was about the review of forthcoming ICT-enabled applications. Basically, the paper was regarding that how in higher education we are going to use the ICT-enabled tools, and we can know now from last 1 year we are using blended mode of learning, and we are all using the different tools. But these are tools that we are using now. But what are the tools that we are going to come in near future for learning, because blended and online learning is promoted. So that is what there is in the paper. So I have abstract, introduction, background, future tools of ICT and learning. We have done a case study work also, conclusion and references.
Okay, you can skip abstract and introduction. You can directly go to the case studies or future tools. Okay.
Okay. Sir, just I would like to just go through because I have talked about 3D printing. These are the new upcoming tools that are coming up, that like virtual
Okay.
reality, 3D printing. We are now going to incorporate them. We are having labs also, and we are having different programs that are coming up. So that is there. Then hologram teaching, augmented reality, robotics is there. Now in our case study in our own institute, that is Zamia Hamdard, we have in the computer science department, we are having the NPTEL online module. So we started this year, and then in that we took a robotics in a robotics club we made, and in that robotics club we had around 300 students, and they we formed groups, and we had the YouTube channel that was in NPTEL. In that, the students, we enrolled them, we showed the videos, and then all the modules that were there. So it was really a good learning activity. Now we have robotics lab also there set up. So in that, even they participated and they won e-Yantra artificial intelligence competition. So we found that earlier we were trying to teach, but using these initiatives, the e-learning initiatives that are now, and now also we are using the virtual labs and other things. So this really helps in promoting learning in the students, because they learn by doing. So we teachers were also involved, and we used classrooms also. First of all, in the starting, we brought the students in our classrooms, and then we showed their videos and everything. Initially video lectures were there, then we conducted the workshops and all. And then this after gradually after some time, we found that the students automatically, now we were not saying, but they were automatically driven, self driven. So this is good initiative, and now we have other programs that are running successfully. So this was the impact that we found, and now more initiatives are there. So now, so ICT is a e-learning resource. This is what the paper is highlighted, and we also actually did it and in our own institute, and saw that how it improves the learning also, and at the time of admissions also, and at the time of students placements also. It helps in all the way. So this is what there in the paper, sir.
Okay, you have mentioned so many e-learning tools. Okay, so will you tell me which tool is very powerful, which can attract the students?
Right now, sir, I am using virtual learning. Like in whatever classes we are taking, we are using the right now. What I am feeling, because I am talking about the virtual labs part. Right now, I am talking that this is more helpful to them, because the practical programs that they have to practice. So sitting at homes, they are getting the whole list of experiments, and they can do it themselves, and they really are engrossed in learning. So this is, I am feeling that they are because of the programming part, I am feeling that this is a very good opportunity that they are getting the virtual. And otherwise robotics and all, we are showing them in YouTube and all right now, but virtual labs is the most appropriate thing that is going on these days, sir.
Okay, it's fine. Please take care of yourself and your family.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Sapna. Also, please take care. And our next presentation is from Mr. Tirth Vyas, and his presentation is about speed and distance alerting device.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, I will be sharing my screen. Okay, is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So good afternoon all. My paper title for this presentation is Speed and Distance Alerting Device. Myself, Tirth Vyas, and here are the co-authors for the same. Our device was implemented under the guidance of Professor Radhatira Desai. Well, we all are an undergrad student at BITS Edu campus, and she is our guide for the same. Hence, the agenda for today's presentation is first we taking the introduction. Second and third would be the visual way and the tools and technologies that we have used for the speed alerting device. Well, there are two different devices based on Raspberry Pi 3 Model B and Arduino Uno. And 4 and 5 will be the visual band tools and technology for distance alerting device. And 6 and 7, that's the conclusion and future scope. And lastly, we will be taking the references. So taking the introduction, more than 97,000 people died due to accidents caused by overspeeding. That was the data conducted by the Union Ministry of Road and Highway Transport. And this figure is total of 64.4% of total deaths in India. Hence, by taking this report, the government provided an approach for decreasing these accidents caused due to overspeeding. In April 2018, they declared that the expressways should have a speed limit of 120 km/h for national highways. There should be 100 km/h, and for urban areas, that's our city area and all that, there should be 70 km for M1 category of vehicles, that's the big trucks and vehicles. Hence, the accident zones that they were been including were school zones, college zones, hospital zones, and some of the places where there are majorly the sharp turns and all. So they were declared the accident zones. Hence, for that, they have declared 40 to 70 km/h in that particular zones. And where the speed limit was 80 km/h, they have declared 60 km/h for that roads. Hence, for that, the government right now is been using this signboards of that I have been. A study was been conducted that majority of the signboards are gone unnoticed by the drivers, which led to the road accident, and people lives are at risk. Hence, to follow these rules, we are defining two devices. That's first is speed alerting device and second is distance alerting device. Where here our speed alerting device, which cautions the driver with a beep sound, and it will provide an alertion when a driver reaches the school, hospital, or accident zone, and to reduce the car speed. If it's exceeding the predefined speed limit, that's 40 km/h in our case. And if the driver reduces the speed of the car to the predefined limit, then the beep sound and the alertion will stop. And if the driver does not, then the alertion continues. And the second device is distance alerting device. where here it will provide an alertion to maintain a safe distance with the car from the front and alerts the driver with the bus if the distance is less than 10 meters and initiates a siren if the distance is less than 5 meters. Well, many of the luxurious cars are providing this feature, but at a very high cost. Hence, our whole project was under a budget of 10,000. Hence, it is quite cost effective for the same. And okay, let me take the visual way for the same. Hence, our first task was to define the physical location of the school zones, and the second was the geolocation of the vehicle that has been moving towards the school zone or the accident zone. For that, we have created a geofence of 500 meters that's in radius of 250 meters. Hence, when a car enters a geofence, it will first provide an alertion that you have entered a geofence and your speed is above 40 or above 30. Hence, when the car is in the defined our geofence, then the alertion will continue if driver does not decrease the speed, and if the driver decreases the speed, then the alertion will stop and driver will follow the safety rules and regulations for the same. Hence, here the speed alerting device helps the driver to take care of his and others' safety. The tools and technology used for the speed alerting device here are, we have used Raspberry Pi 3 Model B. We have used Android Things. It's an initiative by Google. Recently in January 5, 2021, Google revoked the access of Android Things. Hence, for that, to complete our project, we use the Lineage OS. It's an Android-based operating system. Hence, the code was basically written in Java. Hence, we were able to implement those. And the Maps API for extracting the physical locations by getting the latitude and longitude of the schools and colleges and hospital zones. Hence, in the last, we have used the geofence that we have declared of 500 meters. Here, for the implementation, we have used Hepperson sign formula, where the formula is that there is a fixed location of latitude and longitude. That's our school zone or college zone, and the moving location is our vehicle that has been at an overspeed of some speed like 40 or 50. Hence, here the formula calculates the distance between the two locations and alerts the driver if he or she, or the driver enters the geolocation as per the defined code in Java. Hence, the calculation uses the radius of Earth as 6,371 kilometers. It's an approximate value. It was in some point or something like that. So we have just taken a round for that. And here is the Java code for the same. Here we have used the, here below you can see that the location of the school, that's the X is defines the latitude and second is the longitude for checking the geofence. And here is the speed that has been defined at 40 kilometers per hour is greater than, and we have been calculating the speed for the same. Without taking much time, I would be providing a demo for the same that we have implemented. We have used the Android emulator for the same. Here the emulator current speed at the highway, that's our Bits Edu campus, is 129 kilometers per hour, and it will give an alertion if the speed is greater than 40 kilometers per hour. And the geofence has been declared at a half a kilometer, that's 500 meters. Hence, the vehicle has been entering the geofence. Its speed is 129 and it's been entering. Yes, wait for a while. Yeah, okay. Okay. Here was the first solution that did, please slow down, your speed is greater than. Here was the second solution where the driver has to decrease the speed. Hence, the vehicle is right now in the school zone. Hence, it has been providing that please slow down, your speed is greater than 40 kilometers per hour. Okay, that's all for the speed alerting device. Further, I will be taking the distance alerting device, where the distance alerting device is taking dividing it's using ultrasonic center. It's dividing.
Sorry to interrupt you, but one
Yes,
last
ma'am.
minute left for your presentation.
Oh, okay, ma'am. The distance alerting device has been taking calculating the distance. If it's less than 10 meters, then it will give the first alertion, and in the second alertion will be provided at 5 meters. And tools and technology for the same are Arduino Uno, ultrasonic center, LED buzzer. I will be here is the ultrasonic center has been The waves are being emitted from the sensor, and the receiver will be taking and calculating the distance between the two objects. I will be, okay, here is the demo. I will be skipping for that and directly going to the conclusion. Here are the connections for the same. It's been connection for the LED and buzzer with Raspberry Pi and Arduino Uno. Conclusion and feature scope. Speed and distance alerting device will help to reduce the road accidents and maintain a safe distance between two cars and detect the object in front of the car. And as it also detects the vehicle speed and alert the driver if the vehicle speed is exceeding the predefined limit in the school, college, and hospital zones. Hence, the distance alerting device, it uses ultrasonic sensor and calculates the distance between the cars and cautions the driver with LED and buzzer. With a beep sound, if the distance is less than 10 meters, and continuous alertion at 5 meters. And the speed alerting device, it uses the GPS module for the vehicle location, and the location class calculates the speed of the vehicle using Maps API. The physical location of the school and college has been extracted, and geofence is created of 500 meters, that 250 meters in radius, and provides the alertion for the same. Future scope is that further this device can be linked to an Android and iOS application, and data ingestion can be performed using Cloud IoT Core or any other web services. The important data can be extracted and can be used to derive driving performance, overspeeding analytics, and many other useful data like frequent visit or accident zone, and alert the driver in advance to drive safe and slow. Hence, this device can be used in a variety of domains like vehicle insurance, testing driving skills, and several others. References are as follows. So thank you. That's all.
Okay. For speed analysis device, I would like to say one thing. If we to track more vehicles at a time, so is there any strategy to differentiate each and every vehicle, to identify each and every vehicle?
Yes, sir. Each and every vehicle will have their own speed alerting device and their own declared geofence and their own declared geolocation. Hence, when the vehicle enters in a geofence of the declared zone, it will give an alertion.
Okay.
We are having a physical devices. So I said that it costs around only 10,000.
Okay. Okay. You have done a very nice work. I think there is my suggestion that you have to go for startup.
Yeah, sir. We have applied for SSIP, that's Student Startup Innovation Policy by our GTU. So we have been applied for that same.
Okay. Is there any response from that institution?
No, sir, not yet. It's been applied like 2 to 3 months back. So we have been waiting for that.
Okay. Wish you all the best. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Tirth. And as all our presentations are done, we are moving ahead with our closing remarks. I sincerely thank our authors for their excellent presentation in this session, and all our participants for being a part of this international conference. I hope this session was informative enough, and all the presenters would be getting their digital certificates through email within 2 working days. Further, all the papers have already been forwarded to the Springer, and the publication will be live within 5 to 6 months. So kindly cooperate with the team of ICTIS 2021. I also thank our session chair for chairing the session, a token of appreciation to the chair on behalf of ICTIS 2021 and Global Knowledge Research Foundation. Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable presence.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. And also I would like to request you all to on the camera so we can take a quick snapshot of our virtual conference. Great. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. Goodbye, sir.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Please all take care of yourself and your family. Thank you.
Yes. Stay safe and take care.